What's up, everybody? It is great to have you back with us once again for another edition of the 𝗵𝗀 podcast presented by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand, so find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. Cam Smith with my man 𝗙𝐶 Johnson, 𝗪𝗡 Insider, and it is a very hot weekend and week in the city of Chicago. Not only just weather-wise, finally we turned the corner, I believe, 𝗙𝐶, when it comes to the weather in the city, but also because the entire NBA is here, except for the team still competing in the playoffs along with their front offices, because it's NBA draft lottery and combine week. And it is a very interesting and exciting time for a lot of teams on a number of different levels. And we're going to unpack from what we've been able to see for the first few days of just the NBA descending on the city of Chicago once again. And we know that the draft lottery, but definitely the combine has been here. Feels like forever in the city of Chicago. And I love that it's here because you're getting to see a lot of the next crop of NBA stars. And of course, as I mentioned, you have executives and former coaches and current coaches and players just all hanging around. It's like a big basketball reunion in the city of Chicago, which is really cool. But 𝗙𝐶, man, we have to start it with the start of the week, the anticipated NBA draft lottery, which happened on Monday at McCormick Place in the South Loop of the city of Chicago. You were on the streets, man, right there at McCormick Place. And this Bulls team, there were some people like myself holding out hope that maybe the basketball gods could bless the Bulls similarly to what they did back in 2008 when those percentages of getting the number one pick were under 2%, 1.7. I believe, and didn't really turn out that way for this Bulls team, 𝗙𝐶. The odds played into the favor of the 85% of them landing at 12.
Yeah, and obviously what made it hard for Bulls fans to stomach was the Mavericks getting the number one overall pick. Bulls having the same record as the Mavericks, but Mavericks winning the tiebreaker, the random tiebreaker. So, yeah, but look, man, it's like this franchise got Michael Jeffrey Jordan and Derrick Rose. So it's like how much luck do they need? I mean,
Bulls fans and basketball fans in general love to be spoiled and are stingy. Like they want all of the glory for themselves. And I get it, but also, everybody has to eat in some ways when it comes to the NBA too. So we had our great ones.
Yeah, and for those conspiracy theorists out there, I have been in the drawing room 3 times over my career. I was not there last night, but trust me when I say it is not rigged. It was impossible to rig it. I've seen the proceedings. I've watched it myself with my own eyes. It is impossible to be rigged. So
yes,
I know it's fun to theorize, but it's not true. It's not true.
There we go. Look, I love that you mentioned that, 𝗙𝐶, because of course, when people see the Dallas Mavericks getting the number one overall pick and them trading away Luka Doncic at the trade deadline, they're like, oh, well, the NBA and Adam Silver conspired against the rest of the league to make sure the Mavs got the number one overall pick. And obviously we know where the Mavs should be going with that pick in Cooper Flagg. And, of course, the people are going to say that, well, the Dallas Wings got Paige Beckers. They got the number one overall pick, and now the Mavs have Cooper Flagg. So interesting, wild stuff.
Yeah, and I've heard some people speculate already that the Mavs might trade that pick. I mean, obviously it's early in the 𝗵𝗀ci sweepstakes speculation. I personally would be surprised. I mean, I don't have any intel on this. It's more of a gut feel. It's like, I mean, they just trade away a franchise superstar. Cooper Flagg projects to, be a good player for a long time. Obviously, with Kyrie missing at least a portion, if not all, of next season, they're not really in win now mode. So, and I still am in the minority, Cam, that I don't think Giannis and the Bucks are going to work on a trade this summer. I could be wrong. That's just based on some preliminary conversations I've had and just kind of gut feel. I've all along maintained that's a really unique situation, special relationship there. So a lot of off-season gossip and drama coming as always. That's what we love so much about this league. But I personally see the Mavericks using that first overall pick on Cooper Flagg.
Yeah, I do as well. And it would be smart for them to do that just with the skill set that Cooper Flagg has. And just some people out there, of course, along with the conspiracy theorists, are thinking that Cooper Flagg is a made-up type guy and the hype isn't, there and it's, justified for him. I'm here to tell those people stop, because Cooper Flagg is real. And so I was one of those people, 𝗙𝐶, going into the college basketball season. I'd heard of Cooper Flagg and, seen some things when he was at Mount Verb, but I'm like, is he really that good? And then you start to see the Team USA practices, and you start to see a lot of people, just how a lot of people in the city of Chicago, current players, former players with other teams, Chicago is always the basketball hub, especially in the summer with guys coming here to work out, and they just spend a lot of time in Chicago. But from the conversations that I've had going back to last summer with current guys in the league, former pros, guys that are in the know when it comes to the high school basketball scene on a national level and also on the collegiate level, everyone across the board was saying that, yes, no, Cooper Flagg is real. It's no hype. He is legitimate. So, again, for those people that think it's just hype, no, stop it. He is the real deal. So the Dallas Mavericks, for sure, got a blessing there. It's just interesting that it played out this way because you had teams like the Washington Wizards, the Utah Jazz, who had the best odds to get the number 1 overall pick, and also the Charlotte Hornets try to use some tanking methods to get themselves in position to get that number 1 overall pick. And all three of those teams, KC, landed on the outside of the top 4. And for me, I'm of the thinking, and if I speak for you incorrectly, then I apologize, but I think we're cut from that same basketball cloth when it comes to tanking is bad and it should not be rewarded. And so when you see those examples of the Utah Jazz, of the Washington Wizards, of the Charlotte Hornets, literally tanking for that number 1 spot and not get rewarded for it, you're just like, well, just play the games. And that's how it should be. It should be competitive basketball instead of just throwing everything to the wind just because you want to try and position yourself for that top spot.
Let the good times cruise at the Crosstown Classic with Sun Cruiser and CHSN, May 16th to the 18th. CHSN is rolling into Wrigleyville, so don't miss your chance to win free prizes and enjoy ice-cold Sun Cruisers. Follow Sun Cruiser and CHSN now to find out where we'll be before first pitch.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the second year in a row there's been quite a bit of upheaval at the top. I mean, this was even more drastic with all 3 teams falling out of the top 3. I mean, Charlotte got the 4th pick, but yeah, with Dallas, Spurs, and Sixers going into that top 3, it was quite the unpredictable night, and it really shows that luck. It's all about obviously luck in the lottery, and so you can tank and increase your odds, but it's not always going to pay off. And at the end of the day, the Bulls have made it clear they're not going to tank. They're not going to tank again next season. We all have heard that the 2026 draft is just as good, if not better, than this draft. So prepare for more of the same, and either the Bulls will, be out of the lottery next year if they have a good season, or they'll have very small odds again next season.
Yeah, right. And we're not trying to see 𝗵𝗇ce 𝗵𝗂 or anybody be a representative of the Chicago Bulls at next year's NBA draft lottery, because hopefully, again, to your point, the Bulls are playing playoff basketball and have to be in that position. And so I know there was one kind of gasp and kind of clutching of the pearls around the room when the final 3 were in position to get that number 1 overall pick. So take us through that one, KC, and then we'll get into the Bulls being selected 12th or getting the 12th spot.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, it's always a fun, it's a made for TV night, and kind of a cool event. But yeah, I mean, it's like no one expected the Mavericks to get the number 1 pick, just like nobody expected the Bulls to in 2008 when they got Derrick Rose. And, these are franchise changing moments. And, whether or not you believe Cooper Flagg is going to be, a franchise changer, to me, he projects at minimum to be a multiple-time All-Star. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the USA basketball stuff, because that's the same stuff that I keep hearing when I talk to people about him, is if you watch those practices, he wanted all of the smoke. He went right at LeBron. He went right at AD. He's not scared of the moment. Now, I've heard he's also a very humble guy, good teammate, but in terms of just not being scared of anything on the court, you saw it not only at Duke and in the tournament, but also with those USA practices. So I'm excited to see him in the Big D. I know that franchise has needed some positive news after the tumult that they endured following the Luka Doncic trade. So let's see where this goes.
Yes, we'll definitely see where it goes. I did see the video of the Mavericks room of their front office executives, and Nico Harrison, the GM, just leap out of his seat when the Mavs got the number 1 overall pick. So I'm sure Nico Harrison had whatever high-end bottle of liquor that he had, if he does drink, probably took a sip of it and enjoyed that night because they got the number 1 overall pick. So shout out to Nico Harrison. I believe that the basketball guys were smiling on him like, you know what? We're going to send you this blessing. You need it right now because he's been going through a hell of a time. Before all of that, though, before we get to the culmination of the NBA draft lottery, the Bulls had an 85% chance of landing at the 12th spot. As we mentioned, they had a 1.7% chance of getting that number one overall pick. And it was just kind of one of those, we had you on the Chicago Sports Network, Casey, and we were talking about this. Like, was it like a gut punch seeing the Bulls being revealed as the team selecting 12th in the NBA draft lottery? Or was it just like, you know what? Well, they had an 85% chance of landing at 12, so we shouldn't be as surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the lead with you guys last night in the moment, so I've gotten a little more intel since. And I mean, look, I loved how 𝗏DC handled the media session post pick. And look, you know, he's a player, and obviously he's going to talk positively and optimistically about the future. But he talked about, like, I know these guys. I know this class. I played against a lot of these guys. I played with a lot of these guys. I know everyone. He said there are hidden gems in this draft. And you can find, you know, a good player at 12. So obviously, you know, that's a 20-year-old kid talking optimistically and positively. I have, you know, heard that Arturas, you know, obviously understood going in that it's all about luck. You know, the fact that the Mavericks got the number one pick and the Bulls lost that tiebreak, you know, there are some optics to be concerned about there. Yeah. But, you know, Arturas told us at that season-ending news conference, Cam, you heard him. I mean, it's like, you can find value in any draft, and unexpected things can happen. I mean, it's cliche to say now at this point, but nobody expected 𝗏DC to be there at 11 last year, and he obviously had a very strong rookie season. So, you know, I know 𝗏DC is confident they can find a good player at 12, and I talked to some people at the Combine today that, you know, outside of the Bulls that just said, I said, where does this draft drop off? And they said, well, it depends on who you talk to. Some people say after 8, but you know, 8 through 15, you're still going to get a solid player if the right things fall to you and if you've done your homework. And look, the Bulls obviously, like most teams, feel like they've done their homework. So you can't predict the draft board this early. I know we're going to get into a couple names that we both like, but you know, it's really incumbent on the Bulls now to hit on these draft picks, because we heard Arturas ask for patience, and now they've got these first round picks, and they've got to hit on them. There can be no more Patrick Williams, and I'm not fully writing him off, but you know, we're still wanting more from him from several years ago. So you can't have situations like that. You got to hit on bona fide contributors from the jump with these first round picks moving forward.
And David Hall and Gabe Ramirez and I, after we, you know, spoke with you, Casey, on the Chicago Lead last night, had a really good conversation. And David wanted to make the point of superstars and how you need superstars and stars to really get you over that hump, which I agree on. But hinted towards what we're seeing in this run of the playoffs and talking about the superstars and the stars on these teams. But I had to remind them, and folks have to remind themselves of this too, when it comes to not being in that top 5 or getting the number one overall pick. When you look at the stars and superstars on some of these rosters, like the 𝗵rise 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀s that just gentlemen swept the Cavaliers in the second round, a 64-win team, Cavaliers team in the second round, and are now back in the Eastern Conference Finals for the second consecutive year. Or the New York Knicks with a player by the name of Jalen Brunson that was drafted in the second round, who I still have some issues with that in that draft of where Jalen went there. And then you go to the Denver Nuggets of Nikola Jokic. And yes, Jokic is a once-in-a-generation player. I get that. But at the time, drafted in the second round, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wasn't a top 5 guy, wasn't a guy on top of draft boards. He was drafted later in the first round. So it's about the development of these players when they get to their respective franchise. And so that's the position that the Bulls will find themselves in once again, is their player development and making sure that whoever they draft at 12 can really be a guy that can open up some eyes and be a all-star level type player. I think 𝗏DC has the mentality, I think the skill set to be one of those guys as well. He was drafted at 11 last year. We saw how he was able to develop and really come into his own, especially with more minutes throughout the season. So it's not to say that just because the Bulls are at 12, and you're not saying this, I'm not saying this either, but just because the Bulls are at 12 doesn't mean that, oh, they're just going to get some just random guy and it's not going to work out. It's about doing your homework, to your point, Casey, with this front office and making sure that they're doing a due diligence with these players and selecting the right guy for this team where they can have this player grow and get the best out of them. And to some people's points of this draft, I think this is a deeper draft than some believe. and we'll get into these names now, that where the Bulls select at 12, I think there's still some guys that can really help this team. And more so on the defensive end, I think that's where they'll find their player that they're looking to draft at 12. So we talked about Cooper Flagg for sure, going number 1 overall, in our opinion, to the Dallas Mavericks. I think the entire basketball world will be shocked if it's Ace Bailey as the first name called, or Dylan Harper, or VJ Etchcomb, or Trey Johnson, anything like that. It'll be Cooper Flagg. But there are guys with offensive skill sets that we will see go in the first 5 to 7 picks that will for sure help a franchise. But when you start to get outside of that top 7, top 5, top 7, top 8, and get into the 10s and the teens, there are guys that can really have longevity in the league, but then also be some of those guys that surprise people with multiple All-Star appearances. So, KC, who are some guys on your radar that you've seen since you've been at the Combine? I'll be there tomorrow with you, and we'll definitely do our thing with the player interviews. But from the agility tests and also some of the shooting drills that we saw, some guys that really piqued your interest in that would be good selections for the Bulls at 12.
Well, I'm glad you brought the defensive end, because I mean, obviously you can't draft for need. You got to take best talent available, or just go through your process, and whoever's top on your board that's available at 12, that's who you pick. But I mean, I personally think the Bulls, we all know, are lacking in rim protection, and I think there's some opportunities to add some rim protection at 12. I mean, obviously there's some names already linked to the Bulls through some mock drafts, or even just some buzz or chatter, is Asa Newell, Colin Murray-Boyles. These are bigs that, project to, be athletic, offer some rim protection. They've got different skill sets. But, I just feel like the Bulls have so many guards that I know I just said you got to draft best talent available, but I just personally will be shocked if they had another guard. I think they have to be looking front court. And I think there's going to be, if not, I don't maybe see like a Derek Queen falling to them. I think that would be too much of a surprise. But like there might be a surprise that might fall to them. And if not, there's still going to be enough bigs that can, or for at least front court players, not necessarily big men, but front court players that can offer some rim protection, offer some two-way ability, offer some defensive acumen, especially with, like you said, the bucket getters going in those top 5, 6 picks. So, again, it's too early to project how the draft board is going to go, but those are a couple of names that are on my radar to start.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see just how everything unfolds as you get through and outside of the top 5 to 7 picks, because those names of the Cooper Flaggs and Trey Johnsons and Etchcombs and, guys like that, Harpers and Baileys will be off the board. So for teams like the Brooklyn Nets, and trying to see where they will go at 8, and, teams in the 9th spot as well, to see what they decide. But I'm curious to see if this one name could potentially drop to the Bulls at 12. I doubt it, but it's kind of wishful thinking on my part. And I've watched him at Duke, and then watched him in the Olympics last summer, is Khaman Maluach. And as more people start to become familiar with him and kind of look back at his work, especially his last game against Houston, and they'll see, okay, he's 7'2", but he didn't get a rebound and he played 20-plus minutes. What's going on with this? But trust me, people, what I saw in the Olympics, and also the exhibition game against Team USA, where you saw South Sudan really take it to Team USA, Khaman Maluach was really taking that game to heart. I mean, obviously he understood what the ramifications would be and the ripple effect. If he showed well, then of course his name gets bigger on the basketball landscape and helps his draft status. But he was a dude, KC, catch and shoot from the mid-range, extended his shot out from 3, but just at 7'2", with his wingspan and just his awareness defensively, and that was more on display at Duke. Just because of that's what John Shire needed. They didn't need Maluach to step out and pick and pop and shoot threes, because they had one Cooper Flagg and also Con 𝗏𝗏, who's also going to go in the top 7 picks probably. But Maluach is a name for me. If he slips down and is available at 12 for this Bulls team, you think about rim protection. You think about just a growing offensive skill set, and watching him in the shooting drills, there's a fluidness to how he catches and shoots. But then also when he develops and he gets there, he's going to be a guy for sure, if developed properly with this Bulls team, could be a nice piece for this group.
Yeah, I got to say, Cam, I like that prospect. I like that player. I loved his performance in the Olympics, but I think you kind of preface it by saying it might be wishful thinking. I mean, early chatter or buzz would lead me to believe he might not be available. To me, he's like Derek Queen. Would be a great fit. I'd love to see it, but I personally think he'll be off the board. But again, look, we're talking this on May 13th, right? I mean, a lot can happen in the next 6 weeks that can be unpredictable. And I mean, people are going to get tired of hearing me say this between now and the June 25th draft, but nobody expected Modest to be there at 11. So crazier things have happened. I like your thinking. I like how you described him. And he would be a good fit, but I don't think he'll be available. Who's your other guy? So you got another guy.
Let the good times cruise at the Crosstown Classic with 𝗏𝐶ruiser and CHSN, May 16th to the 18th. CHSN is rolling into Wrigleyville, so don't miss your chance to win free prizes and enjoy ice-cold 𝗏𝐶ruisers. Follow 𝗏𝐶ruiser and CHSN now to find out where we'll be before first pitch.
I'm going to go with a name that I think will grow and get buzzier as we get closer to the draft, and it's the guy out of St. Joe's that played in the A-10, Rashir Fleming. I really like Rashir Fleming. I think he has, one, the size to really help with rim protection. He has the athleticism to do that. And then just watching him and how he moves, not just from what we saw with the shuttle drills and the back pedals and things like that, and just his body movement, and of course, and how he tested out, but just watching him play this past season with St. Joe's in the A-10. He's a guy, 𝗪C, talk about defensive awareness with Khaman Maluach. Like Rashir Fleming on the perimeter and just how he can burst through gaps to get steals and get down the court and finish over the top of guys. I'm like, all right, if he's available at 12 after the Maluach is gone and Derek Queen is gone for sure, if you have Rashir Fleming there, and this is a name that will start to grow on people if you do your research, and more people will probably, I'm sure, start to talk about him. He's the guy that I think would fit nicely with this Bulls team at 12 because he's going to come in, live body, energetic, has size, has great just fluid motion for himself. And watching him in the shooting drills, especially from the corner three, his jumper looks very fluid. I mean, quick release, shoots it very straight up and down. There's really not too many flaws that I see from watching him in those drills. Of course, as you go through the individual workouts and as you kind of dig in more in terms of what he shot and in certain situations, you'll find out more about Rashir Fleming. But that's a name for me that people aren't speaking about right now, 𝗪C, that I think could be there and a good option for the Bulls at 12.
Well, you prepped me for this off-camera or pre-taping, so I will say that's a deep cut. You've done your research because I will say most mocks that I've seen have him late first round. So I think he absolutely will be available at 12. We obviously have no intel yet on what the Bulls think of him, but he will be there at 12. I'm very confident in saying that. So, hey, man, you might have an early find there, Cam. We'll have to see how it plays out. But
I hope so. I hope so because I was high on Patrick Williams and really liked the Bulls drafting him at 4 for the team that was in place for the Bulls at that time. And not to write Patrick off, but also you expected more from that. So
yeah, I think one overall theme though that we can take away that we're both with both the names we're throwing out there is, I mean, and look, again, you have to just trust your process, go with your best player available. But we're talking about guys that have two-way potential, athletic, and with obviously the Billy Donovan and his staff changing their offensive philosophy last season, playing more up tempo, shooting threes. You want someone that can fit into that style of play. And offensively, I think the Bulls were very good last year. Their passing was great all year. Their three-point shooting was great all year. Defensively, they got a lot of room to grow. So if you add a two-way player, athletic, can play up tempo, that's kind of the consistent theme. Now, I'm not saying all these players are exactly similar because they're not, but there are some consistent themes that you can draw from that I think would be a good match for the Bulls.
Yeah, no doubt. And they will definitely have a boatload of options when they get to the 12th overall pick of the June draft. And again, it'll be interesting to see, who will be in the groups of the workouts for the Bulls when they have them, and the feedback that some guys will get from that. So I would not be surprised for sure if 𝗏𝗏 𝗏𝗀 is brought in to work out for the Bulls. I mean, he has the Lithuania connection there, of course.
And ILLINI connection with Iowa, man. Let's go.
Exactly. So it's going to be some names that for sure, and also his teammate Will Riley is a guy that seeing a lot of mocks and just hearing the chatter around it is a first round guy. So I'm gonna have him going late first round. Some mocks have him going around the middle area of the first round, but for sure with his size and his scoring ability and just natural scoring ability and feel on the floor, he's going to get a lot of looks and for sure will be a first round pick. So I'm just curious again, as we get there, and it's a long time, as you said, it's May 13th, KC, and we got so much time to really get there. But when we start to get closer and see the guys invited to the Advocate Center to get those workouts in, and the invites back to the Advocate Center to get those workouts in, to see who those players are and what those names are.
Yeah, and like I said, we just threw out 4 names. We're going to have plenty more between now and the June 25th draft. I will say, this management regime is very different. They do not actually release draft workouts, whereas John Paxson and Gar Forman did. I mean, we're 5 years removed from that now. So any intel on individual workouts will have to come from sourcing or agencies, et cetera. And look, I know people get into workouts and they are important, but I mean, when you're picking 12th, you're going to be casting a wide net for workouts. There are going to be a lot of bodies coming through. We haven't even mentioned the fact the Bulls have a second round pick. So, and quite frankly, this is just total speculation on my part. I'm not sourcing this out, but that could be a draft and stash situation because obviously the Bulls have a lot of guaranteed contracts already coming back next year. You're adding a guaranteed contract in that first round pick. So just something to think about. It's the Bulls. This regime's become very secretive with their draft process. Yeah. They're still mad at me for getting the Patrick Williams intel in 2020, which I got a nice tip a few days before the draft. So
it's one of those things, KC, where you say don't hate the player, hate the game. Just don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah. But I haven't got anybody since then. So I did not have Dalen Terry on my bingo card that year. So. and again, people are going to get sick of me hearing say this. I definitely didn't have Modest in my card last year because I thought he'd be a top 5-6 pick. So. No, but this is a fun time of year, and Bulls are going to be casting a wide net. And look, they've seen all these guys before, too. It's just now getting them in your building, putting them through your workout. That's just one data point to add to all the others that you have.
Yeah, no doubt about that, man. So as we continue to get closer to it, Casey Johnson and I will keep our ears to the streets and eyes on everything to give you as much information as we can and are, privy to when it comes to the By the Horns podcast. But Casey, you were just before we wrap things up at the Combine earlier today. Was there any one player or a couple of players that stood out to you from what you've seen? I know it's tough, right? Because you have these guys in these drills and doing these agility tests. So you can't really come away and say, oh man, this guy really surprised me today. You kind of take it with a grain of salt when you see some of these guys just do some of the testing and also just through some of the drills.
Yeah, and today was just a drill day. We're taping this on a Tuesday. There are scrimmages the next couple of days. That gives you a little bit more, eye work. I mostly was just networking and talking to people that I know and just kind of, asking people that I ran into what they thought about 12 and who might be there, stuff like that. So, I didn't have much individual player intel. I do think the media session, we're going to be out there tomorrow on Wednesday where we talk to the players. I mean, that is, it's not a draft point, but it does give you a little window into how these guys tick. I remember talking to Kyle Filipowski at length last year, and then, him falling to the second round and him having a really strong rookie season with Utah. Yeah. He's one guy that stood out to me last year in this process. And I'm excited to talk to Cooper Flagg. I've never talked to him before. So here we go.
All right, man. You got to find your spot in there. KC Johnson will make sure that he finds a spot to get that conversation with Cooper Flagg, man. It's going to be a really busy time tomorrow for sure with the interviews, but an exciting time as well just to talk to these players, as you mentioned, KC, and just get their thought process and, try and see if they can give us a little something in terms of they heard anything from the Chicago Bulls. So we'll see how that works out when we get closer to that. But look, we will be there, and we've already been there. KC Johnson for sure doing what he does best, man, and covering the NBA, and was at the draft lottery on Monday, at the Combine today. We'll be there tomorrow. I'll be with KC tomorrow to get player interviews and just get the lay of the land. As we build towards that June draft, Bulls fans, look, we're going to have a lot of names being thrown your way. You can do your YouTube lookups and stat numbers and all that stuff as we get those names out to you. But it's going to be a fun time and interesting time to see what the Bulls decide when the June draft gets here. But make sure that you stay tapped in to the By the Horns podcast. And, of course, stay tapped in to KC Johnson's Fast Break, where Casey is always giving you that great information. But we appreciate everybody tapping in on the CHSN YouTube page and wherever you're getting your pods. Thank you so much. And that will do it for this edition of the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. I'm Cam Smith. He's the one and only Casey Johnson. We'll talk to everybody soon.